Okay, so we're back with part 2 in which we're going to start styling this block. We'll begin by adding a background image. So to do so, what you want to do is go ahead and open up the styles.css file in a text editor. And then we want to style the section clause. So let's go ahead and look up what that was. And in our case, it's header tutorial. So go ahead and copy this. And in the styles.css, what you want to do is do dot and then the class name, so header tutorial, and then curly brackets. We'll begin by adding a background image, so do background URL and then the URL to the image, which is in our case going to be bg.png. bg.png. If you have troubles finding the right URL, a quick way to get past this is just dragging the image and dropping it into a web browser, and you can just copy this URL from right here. Keep in mind that this is just going to work locally on your computer, and if you're later on want to host this file somewhere, you're going to have to use the proper URL. Okay, so with that done, let's go ahead and save this and update the browser. And as you can see, we now have a background image, but we have some problems here. First of all, the background is repeating to the side. So to fix this, you need to change the background size, and we need to change it to cover. So do background size cover, and that's gonna fix that problem for us, hopefully. And there we go. Okay, and the second problem is that the section is not full screen. So to fix that, you can see that it's already horizontally, it's stretching all the way from side to side, but vertically it's only going as far as our main content goes. And to make this actually full screen, what you want to do is add or specify the height of the section. So we'll set it to 100 VH. And that's going to set it to full screen. If you don't want it to be quite 100%, you can set it to maybe like 80 or 90 or whatever you want, but I'm going to keep it at 100. Okay. Next up, you can change the background position if you want. Say for example, you have some crucial part of the image that's not showing up. For example, at the bottom here, what you could do is set a background position and change it to maybe center bottom, and you will be able to see more of the bottom part of the image. I personally like it to be center top because I think that looks better, so I'm going to set it back to center top. Okay, so next up, if we go ahead and compare this with the final product, is that you can see that the background image here is way darker, and the reason why is because I added a color overlay to make the phone and the text kind of pop. So let's go ahead and add this to our project as well to make this look a little bit better. So one way you can do that is by adding a linear gradient. So to do that, all you need to do is type in linear gradient and then do parentheses RGBA and then parentheses again, and inside here you want to set your color values, so 40 40 40, and then do the opacity. I'll set it to 0.7, so 70%, and then move out of the second parentheses here and do comma again and do another RGBA, and then do the same thing, 40 40 40, and the opacity to 70 again, and then a comma after the last parentheses, and then you can go ahead and save that, refresh, and we now have a nice color overlay here. So the next thing we want to do is fix the text. As you can see, we have the wrong colors here, and the button is also looking pretty crap. So let's go ahead and fix that next. Okay, so let's begin by changing the font color, and since we know all of the text inside the section should be white, we can just go ahead and apply that to the header tutorial class. So let's go ahead and do color and choose a white color here. So I'm going to do FFF. Go ahead and save that and refresh. And now all of the text is white. Next up, we want to change the font family for the text. And again, I want all of the text to have the same font. So inside the header tutorial, I'm going to add font family. And I'm going to do source sans pro. And I want it to file back to sans serif. Go ahead and save and refresh. And we now have a new font here. So the next thing we want to do is actually start styling the text itself, make it look a bit better. So we'll start with the title, which is our H1. So we'll do header tutorial and H1. And in here, we'll start by changing the font size. So I'll do font size 52px. Let's go ahead and preview that. And that's looking pretty good, but it's a bit thicker than in the final project. So I'm gonna go ahead and decrease the font weight, which is by default set to 400, I think. So I'm gonna change it to font weight 300, like so. Go ahead and refresh, and that is now looking pretty good. Okay, so let's go ahead and style the H3 element here. At least I think it's an H3. Let me go ahead and check. Yeah, H3. Okay, so go ahead and copy this. And I'll change the H1 to H3. And for the font size, I'm going to go ahead and do 24. And I'll keep the font weight at 300. Go ahead and save that and refresh. And it's looking a lot better already. But if we compare this to the final product, you can see that the line height is a bit different. So I'm gonna go ahead and increase the line height a little bit. So I'm gonna do line height and something like 32 pixels maybe. Go ahead and refresh, and that's looking pretty spot on. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is change the button. So let's go ahead and go into the style sheet, and we want to target the btn clause, which we put right here. So do dot btn, and we'll start with the background color. So I'm gonna do background color, and I don't actually remember what color I used, so I'm just gonna go ahead and inspect this and copy it from here. Go ahead and close that and paste this in. So the background color is EA1D63. Go ahead and save that and refresh, and you can see that we have this blue border right here that we don't want. So you can either do border none, or in my case I'm gonna do border 1 pixel solid and then put the same color, like so. Go ahead and update, and now the button is starting to look pretty nice, but we want it to be a bit bigger. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'll actually add this styling on top of the background color. So I'm gonna do, actually forgot what I used. Let me go ahead and check here. I used button. Where is the padding? Am I blind? Here we go, here's the padding. So I used 24 and 12. Okay, so let's go into the style sheet here, and we'll do padding 12px and 24px. This is just to get the same style as I had in the final project. So go ahead and update, and you can see that now our button is a lot bigger, but the text is a bit too small. So I'm gonna also go ahead and do in here font size, and I'll set it to like 20 pixels and update. I think I'll decrease the font weight for this one as well, so I'll set it to 300 and refresh. We compare. Should probably remove that. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So the only thing we really have left to do is changing the spacing between the elements. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can either just go into the index.html file and add some Bootstrap classes in here. So for example, MB5 or whatever, or you can add it from the style.css file. So I'm going to add it from in here just to make it a little bit easier. So for the H1, I'm going to do margin bottom, and I'm gonna set it to like 18 pixels something. Go ahead and refresh, and we now got a little bit more whoops, I'm not even on the right one. And then now we got a little bit more spacing here. Okay, we'll do the same thing for the H3, but because we're dealing with a button underneath, I'm gonna increase the margin a little bit more, so maybe 24 pixels tends to look a little bit better. So there we go. So that's the margin taken care of. Yeah, so it's looking pretty spot on. And so the next thing we want to do now is that if we go ahead and check the responsiveness of this site, set this to responsive here, you can see that it's not really working out as intended, right? If we compare this to the final project, you can see that this is all like smooth, right? It's looking a lot better. Although this is not perfect in any stretch of the imagination, this is just something I quickly typed up, but it's a lot better. So let's go ahead and at least achieve this before we end this section of the tutorial. So the first thing we should do is add some new classes to the column. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the index file here, and for our col5, I'm going to go ahead and change this to a col lg5, or I guess like col md5. Col md5, okay? And then I'm going to add a new call here, and we want it to be set to 6. So when you're in mobile view, we want it to be at 6. When you're not in mobile view, we want it to be set to 5. And for the text, I'm actually going to change this to 12. So for the first one, we'll change it from col 7 to col md7, and then for the mobile version, we'll set it to col 12. Go ahead and save that, and we'll refresh. And now when we get down to the mobile view, this should be displaying underneath the phone, like so. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is make sure that this phone is displaying in the center of the screen instead of on this line right here. So to do that, you can just do in the column with the phone, you can just add mx auto, which is going to put the margin for the sides to the center. Okay, so that's going to center the phone for us. And next up, let's go ahead and preview. You can see that we have some problems here if we go to the smallest devices, such as a Galaxy S5 and whatnot, with the it's just not looking right, so the text is way too big and so on. So to fix that, we're gonna have to add some media queries. So let's go ahead and go into our styles.css file here, and we'll add a new media query. So media, and we'll begin with minimum width. So we'll do min width, and on top of my head I think it's 768 pixels. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the one. And we'll set a max width of 991 px. Okay, and curly brackets, and in here we want to change the font size. So go ahead and copy the styling for the tutorial H1 and tutorial H3, paste them in here, and we can remove. We don't want to affect the margin and the font weight, we just want to change the font size. Okay, so when we're on this size of a monitor, we want the font size to go from 52 to perhaps 41 or 42, something like that. I'll go with 41, and then for the H3 I'll set it to 16. So let's go ahead and refresh, and it's not going to affect this state right here because this is an even smaller screen. You can see the dimensions right here, 360 and 640, and we changed it for the 768 and 991. So, but let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger, and you can see that right here is where the text shrinks down a little bit. Okay, so now finally let's change it for the smallest devices here. So go ahead and copy this whole thing. And now we'll just have a max width. So I'm gonna do max width 767. So it's gonna be anything smaller than this. And for the H1, we'll change it to like 38 or 36 maybe. And then for the H3, I'll change it to maybe 12. Also change the line height a little bit. So line height, we can set it to like 20 pixels. Okay, let's go ahead and refresh. And now everything fits on the screen. I think this text is a bit too small, so maybe I'll change it to 14. And yeah, it's not perfect, but you know, it works. So that's it for this tutorial. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you learned something.